This is Thumbing Through the Archives, a weekly radio show and podcast focusing on Michigan history, airing every Wednesday night from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Also streaming in podcast form at our website, senlacbroadcasting.com. Now your hosts Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee.
Okay, and welcome once again to another episode of Thumbing Through the Archives, a podcast exploring the oddities, curiosities, and crimes in Michigan's history. I'm Erica Frisbee. I'm the news director here at Sand Lake Broadcasting, and with me today...
I'm Mike Gallagher. I have a new mic stand today, and I'm from the Sand Lake County News.
Coming across loud and strong, Mike. I
That's
hear you
awesome.
good in my headphones. I'm Nick Lean. I'm the assistant manager at Sand Lake Broadcasting.
We got a constructive critique.
Yeah, and as we said on last week's episode, if you're going to criticize, just be nice to me, because I can be very overly dramatic, and I've decided this episode to limit my breathing as much as possible.
We're all just holding our breath.
Yeah, if I die, that's on you, anonymous commenter. But it's okay. I'll be fine.
Well, if you notice, we put the largest windscreen on your microphone.
See, we accepted the criticism. We made adjustments, but you still hurt my feelings.
Thank you for commenting.
Thank you for commenting, actually. Yeah, I do appreciate it.
Mike says through tears.
Yeah. No, we do appreciate the feedback.
We do. Because again, we are striving to become better.
Yes.
As Nick makes noise in the background.
Yeah, we're trying real hard here.
We're striving to be better. Dead silence.
Listen, we know we're not better.
We're trying. Sometimes silence is better than anything.
Yeah, Sharee probably would have and should have taken that advice.
Boom. Now that's a segue.
So we are getting back into... Pause so that Mike can appreciate his segue.
Thank you. No, your segue.
Yeah, that was
all you.
That was yours.
I'm just constantly setting up segues, and if you connect on one of them, that's all you.
Thank you for the gift.
No problem.
But yes, we're getting back into the case of Sharee Miller, where we just left off in our retelling of the story. So where we last left off, Jerry Cassaday, the lover of Sharee Miller, who she met online and had a relationship with for April to at least November by the time that we're getting to in the script. So 7 months? 7 months, sounds about right.
He had officially done the deed where we left off.
He had officially done the deed after Sharee had convinced him that Bruce was responsible for one miscarriage and then one abortion of Sharee's 2 separate pregnancies, which were never a thing because Sharee had her tubes tied in 1995.
And it was 3 total kids, because the second one was twins, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because the story just has to be as crazy as possible.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, Sharee had convinced Jerry Lee Cassaday that Bruce Miller was a crime boss who was the brother of her previous husband who had been brain dead after falling off the roof of their dream house while building it.
Right.
What really is like crazy to me too is Jerry must have really loved her to like kill a crime boss, you know, like
that's true. Yeah.
I didn't think about that in the last segment or the last episode. Just didn't really cross my mind, but like that's ballsy to go and assuming you're going to have to face retaliation if this guy is the leader of some crime syndicate.
I mean, I figure that's part of the reason why he A, got out of Dodge as quickly as possible,
right,
and B, had the briefcase.
Ah, yeah, you're right.
Oh.
I guess we did talk about that.
Because,
briefly.
like, if Bruce killed him in self-defense, that's the reason for the briefcase. But also, I think Jerry was more so thinking if Bruce's goons...
He's got bodyguards there and stuff. And
like, if they pop out of the woodwork and give chase, and I'm done.
That must have been a relief, like, when he realized that, you know, he's not a crime boss. Okay, we're going to get into that. Or that he was
there by himself, at least.
At least that.
I was going to say, yeah, I think it made it significantly less stressful for Jerry, considering the fact that Bruce was completely alone.
Right.
But we will get into how Jerry reacts when, if he realizes.
A relief or like, oh my God, what have I done?
Right.
So, per usual, very heavy topics. I gave the trigger warnings in the past 2 episodes, and we kind of covered the big broad strokes of why we would have to have trigger warnings.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide is a prominent part of this script.
Oh,
So that is the major trigger warning.
That kind of plays into Nick's prediction from the end of last episode that Jerry kills himself when he realizes what he's done.
Yes.
Okay. Because you did say one of them ends up dead.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we're not giving spoilers.
No. Chuck Miller will never forget the night that his brother died, because it was the same night Sharee arranged for him and his wife to find Bruce dead on the floor of his beloved scrapyard's office. When Sharee first called Chuck and Judy Miller on Monday, November 8th, 1999, reporting that she couldn't get a hold of Bruce, it was about 8:15 p.m., and Chuck couldn't help but be annoyed with his sister-in-law's hysterics at first. There was less than a half hour to kick off for a Monday night football game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys, and so Chuck at first brushed off Sharee's concerns. Bruce wasn't known for his timeliness exactly, and Chuck felt sure that his brother was fine, just taking too long to close up so that he could tinker on some cars at the junkyard. He told Sharee as much and encouraged her to drive by and check out the scrapyard if she was concerned. When Sharee hung up from that call around 8:20, she had finally been joined by her friend Laura Ewald, who had run late to their agreed 5:30 p.m. hangout. Laura thought nothing of it when Sharee had called her shortly before her arrival at 7 p.m., making sure Laura was still coming, that she hadn't been stood up. Unbeknownst to both Laura and Chuck, Sharee had called the salvage yard herself about 6:50 p.m. to confirm Bruce was dead, unable to pick up the phone, let alone dial for help. That was despite Jerry calling her cell phone with their signal on his way out of town, as if Sharee didn't truly trust Jerry and wanted to know the job was actually done. As the salvage yard's office phone rang out, Sharee was satisfied her 48-year-old husband was gone. There were no tears right then. If anything, it was like a director called action from off stage, and Sharee sprung into an almost practiced routine. With her children unknowingly part of the alibi as they asked for the takeout food they had been promised would be served around 6:30 p.m., when Bruce was supposed to bring it home, Sharee soothed them, making one of them a sandwich and insisting their stepfather was on the way home. When Laura Ewald arrived around 7 p.m., Sharee betrayed no concern, instead pulling her in to help install a new internet chat, ICQ, program on her desktop computer, and it wasn't until they gave up around 8:10 p.m. that Sharee wondered aloud where Bruce could be, that he should definitely have been back by then.
So why was she trying to set up a new chat thing?
I don't know.
Just because?
Because she was addicted to the internet.
To the internet, yeah. It doesn't really play into the story.
It doesn't. No. It's the thing that helps build her alibi /
Right.
It's something solid that also, because Laura is there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
With her audience now in place, Sharee called the scrapyard again, this time reacting dramatically to how the phone went unanswered. She began calling Bruce's relatives, hence why Chuck received a call shortly thereafter. When Chuck suggested that Sharee check the scrapyard, Laura agreed to watch the two oldest children as Sharee borrowed her car, having had her own car blocked in by Laura parking behind her. Taking her youngest Billy with her, Sharee first stopped by the local restaurant, confirming with staff that Bruce had not been there to pick up the food. It's unclear if she picked up the food herself at that point.
It's kind of messed up that she's bringing the youngest with her when she knows what
just wait.
is
just
waiting for him at the scrapyard.
Just wait. Returning to the car, Sharee used Laura's cell phone to call the home phone, panicking about Bruce being missing, with her theatrics distressing her child, who began crying. So she's on the phone with Laura and she starts like playing it up, hyperventilating, freaking out. And obviously the kid is like 4 or 5. He's going to react to his mother freaking out.
Yeah, of course. Kids can sense that stuff too, even if you're not freaking out.
Right.
Even if you're like trying to keep it under control, they can still pick up on it, let alone when you're putting on a show like she is.
Mm-hmm. With her crying son in the back seat, Sharee now drove to the scrapyard, only driving by the lot to confirm the gate was closed and not checking if it was also locked, like it would have been if Bruce had left. With her drive-by inspection complete, Sharee returned home, following the path that Bruce usually took so she could pretend to look for accidents. Once back home, the hysterics returned as Sharee reported her findings to Laura, who told her to call the police. A call to the state police obviously turned up nothing regarding the missing Bruce, and so Sharee called Chuck again, pacing about and declaring that something was wrong.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
At this point, how late is Bruce?
He is about 2 hours late.
Do you think her reaction or rehearsed response to this is overkill? Like the hysterics and like the...
I mean, I think so, but I also don't like her.
Right. It just seems like if someone was running a few hours late, you wouldn't immediately jump to the conclusion that something... It'd take a little bit more than 2 hours for me to start calling cops and stuff.
Yeah. Chuck, Bruce's brother, was very much in that kind of camp of like, it's been 2 hours. He comes home late because like sometimes he gets caught up doing car stuff. Like
right.
When you're underneath a car fiddling with stuff, you don't exactly look at the clock.
Right.
So he thought that was what was happening.
Right.
Initially annoyed that Sharee had called again, this time around 8:50 p.m., Judy Miller told Chuck to have Sharee check with Bruce's third wife, both as a way to be helpful and as a way to be difficult for Sharee, as Sharee hated the fact that Bruce was still on good terms with all of his exes. Pause for the irony to sink in.
I was going to say, I forgot that he had so many ex-wives. I forgot about that.
She's mad that he was still on good terms with them, like got along with their kids, like he was supposed to walk one of his former stepdaughters down the aisle at her wedding later that year, and that peed Sharee off. But she's over there having cyber sex and actively cheating on her husband.
Right.
So... Sharee, you don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
That's such a minor note, but like, again, it just kind of
goes... It is very ironic, yes.
It just kind of goes back to who Sharee is.
Yeah,
right.
It's indicative of the kind of person she is.
Yeah,
right.
Rules for thee, not for me.
Right.
But even so, Sharee was really crying now, and that display of emotion worried both Chuck and Judy enough that, to appease Sharee, they agreed they would drive to the office themselves and check. A few minutes later, they were stopping by Bruce's home for the scrapyard gate keys, with the brothers living just down the road from each other. As Chuck and Judy drove to the yard, Chuck tried to figure out what, if anything, could have gone wrong. In his mind, the most logical answer was that a car had fallen on top of Bruce as he had been working on it, and was trapped alone under a car. However, as they opened the gate and approached the office, both Chuck and Judy knew something much more was wrong. Bruce's vehicle was still there, and the office door was unlocked. After calling out to his brother and receiving no response, Chuck carefully let himself and Judy into the office, where they found the prone body of Bruce Leroy Miller, his skin ice cold to the touch, the life having left him several hours before. As Chuck called his and Bruce's mother, Ruth, Judy called 911, asking for police and an ambulance. With how Bruce had fallen and the amount of blood that had collected under him, Judy thought at first he had an accident, but a different reality started to set in as the dispatcher asked if there were any signs of a robbery if anything had been taken. As Judy broke down into sobs, the dispatcher encouraged her to step into the next room, away from the body. It was around that point that Judy shared what Sharee had told them. Bruce had last spoken with Sharee around 6:20 p.m. and was now more than 2 hours late to getting home. Despite all but ensuring that her in-laws would be traumatized by how they learned the news, Sharee received the news in a much easier way, via her mother-in-law, Ruth, who called her as soon as she got off the phone with Chuck. To Ruth's understanding, it had just been a terrible accident, perhaps a heart attack, but Sharee reacted regardless, with Laura saying that she, quote, just went crazy at that point.
Wasn't he shot in the neck, though?
He was, but again,
They didn't see the body.
Ruth hadn't seen the body, and with how he had fallen, his neck, it was more so like his neck wound was down, so it more so looked like he had hit his head.
Okay.
And seeing that he was nearing his 50s, he was in okay health. He had a bit of a beer gut. He was a typical Midwest middle-aged man.
Right, mechanic,
kind of a barrel shape. Hardy, but like not necessarily healthy completely. So, like, they thought maybe it was a heart attack and he fell, hit his head.
Yeah.
And
what was he shot with again?
He was shot with a .22 caliber, I believe. Sorry, a 20 gauge.
Oh.
Even though Ruth had basically told Sharee, hey, we think it's a heart attack, which is honestly a lot better news to initially hear than, hey, your husband was shot.
He was shot in the neck.
You're right.
I'm surprised that wasn't obvious with a 20 gauge shotgun. That's pretty.
It became
blow your neck open.
It became obvious when they flipped him over.
Gotcha.
But again, because of how he was laying, the neck wound was covered.
Did he land on his back?
It seems that he like twisted in the chair and fell like on the side of his head, one side down.
Right.
Laying on the wound or the exit wound where it had.
Yeah. And again, like, because of the amount of blood, the wound kind of just was the same color as the puddle.
Nice.
Yeah, also, they're not staring at it.
Right.
Right, exactly. Like Chuck
They're
and Judy.
investigating it, yeah.
Literally, the dispatcher had to tell Judy, like, it's okay to step away from the body.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you don't have to tell us what happened. We're sending people to figure that
it
out.
Right.
Yeah.
while Chuck and Judy are at the scene getting questioned by police in separate police cars, Sharee is reacting as if she already knows what exactly happened, because she does.
Right.
But despite her alleged horror and grief, Sharee was still able to call several people, including her mother and stepfather, asking them to gather at her home. To an outsider, it may have seemed like Sharee wanted comfort, but at least to me, this just looks like Sharee was trying to strengthen her alibi and claim to innocence, with her friends and family allegedly having to hold her, keep her from driving to the junkyard herself.
Was she, at this point, did she know what had happened yet?
I mean,
according to her.
She didn't officially. She knew that Bruce was dead, but not how.
Right.
But she was reacting to the news of his death.
Right. And calling her family.
Yeah.
For support.
Yeah.
Okay. That's reasonable as long as she's got, confirmation that he's dead. Like anyone would call their parents to.
Right.
It kind of struck Laura Ewald as odd because it was one of those things of like she got off the phone and like instead of just taking a second to even say to Laura like Bruce is dead, like it was immediately
because she had a plan. She had a step by step. Here's what I'm gonna do.
That was odd.
Mm-hmm.
It's also odd that she's building such a strong alibi when she wouldn't be a suspect, really.
Yes and no.
Because of her original alibi.
But considering she knows that even if they don't find the Jerry Lee Cassaday connection, there are certain things that do point to like at least the wife would have motive.
Right.
So she wanted to at least get off the suspect list entirely.
Right. It just kind of seems like she's overcorrecting a little bit.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%, which is honestly in line for somebody who is trying not to get caught for murder.
Right.
Like you're not trying.
That's fair.
I was going to say, because you're worried that if you're too casual, then it's going to show. But like if you're too emotional, people react to things differently. We don't understand psychology. Who knows what's going on in her head? It's very easy to explain away like that.
Right.
Mike, if you killed someone and we're trying to form an alibi, what would your...
I would show up to thumbing through the archives recording just as usual.
Mm-hmm.
And
right after the murder.
Yeah, right after the murder. I would make my appointments. I would still continue to show up and record.
And then like, let's say right around now at this point, you get the phone call that so-and-so is dead. I
would be like, guys,
After this episode, I gotta go.
After this episode, yeah. I'll finish recording, but I gotta get out of here.
That also just begs the question, though, of like, who would he be killing to actually be trying to go?
But it's like, just an interesting, like,
it's definitely an interesting
think about
question.
that.
No, how you would react if,
Right.
I guess it also depends on if it was premeditated or not.
Mm-hmm.
If I accidentally killed somebody, I don't think I would show up to recording.
Right. But I mean...
I feel like you'd just be in total fight or flight.
Yeah.
He would be going for the Ohio border as we spoke.
I guess I'd like to change my answer. If I killed somebody, you guys would never see me again.
Be in the Bronco going down the highway.
I'll miss you.
Yeah.
Where we had left off was Sharee just immediately started calling people, including her mother and stepfather, asking them to gather at her home. To an outsider, it may have seemed like Sharee wanted comfort, but to me, it just looks like Sharee was trying to strengthen her alibi and claim to innocence, with her friends and family allegedly having to hold her, keep her from driving to the junkyard herself. To them, her repeated screams of no, how she rocked herself back and forth as she sobbed upon receiving the news from the police officially, those were actions of pure emotion. If Jerry Cassaday, still on his drive back to Missouri, had heard or saw Sharee, he might have begun having doubts about the trustworthiness of his lover. She was a convincing actor, after all. For his part, Jerry was racing back to Odessa, having abandoned Sharee's cell phone and the murder weapon, a 20-gauge shotgun, somewhere between Michigan and Missouri, virtually untraceable now. When he arrived back home around mid-afternoon on Tuesday, November 9th, he called his brother Mike, who demanded his younger brother explain to him what was going on. "Mike, you don't want to know. You really don't want to know," Jerry replied. And perhaps something in his voice had his brother pausing, asking if everything was all right, assuring him that there wasn't anything that couldn't be undone. Jerry disagreed, telling Mike to leave it alone, that some things couldn't be taken back, and thus Mike needed to stop asking. What was done was done. Leave it alone.
That's a little bit unfair considering he asked him to handle the briefcase and everything.
I know.
Like, if you ask somebody to do that, you have to give them a little bit of context.
Especially your brother.
Right.
To my understanding, from how Mike described it, Jerry was like shaken.
Right. As one would be.
You just killed someone.
Yeah, it was very much in a like, you don't want to know. Like,
right.
You don't, like, I can't talk about it right now. You don't want to know. Like, it wasn't so much of like...
him refusing to tell him, it was his inability to discuss it.
Right.
And I think that to be true, especially because he was like, some things can't be taken back.
Mm-hmm. Which he was right about that, at least, yeah.
Also being left alone for now was Jerry's correspondence with Sharee. While he was sure that they had done their part, had covered their tracks, Jerry also knew that killers got tripped up in the first few days after the murder, especially as investigators honed in their search. While Jerry only avoided talking to Sharee out of necessity to their plot, still longing to talk to the woman he had killed for, Sharee also seemingly decided she would stop talking to Jerry, but for good.
Oh my God.
It would be a major mistake on Sharee's part, the moment when the queen, as it were, lost control of her pawn. And what good is a pawn without its master? And we'll take a really quick break right there.
Stay tuned, hour number 2 of Thumbing Through the Archives, coming up right after your top of the hour news and weather, right here on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM.
And we're back. So, before we get into it, how are we feeling?
I feel like we have it figured out already a little bit.
Well, of course we have it figured out.
Okay.
I know that Sharee just generally sucks as a human being, but her dropping Jerry, I didn't see that coming. That's like a new level of evil.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I understood that correctly, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the last segment, you're teasing that she's essentially...
ghosting him.
Yeah.
Not quite, because Jerry is hanging on for dear life, but you will see as we get going in this next section, Sharee is very much like, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So when the sun rose on Tuesday, November 9th, 1999, Sharee Miller and by extension, Jerry Cassaday were well on their way to convincing everyone that Bruce had died in a random act of violence, a robbery gone wrong. As the Flint Journal reported, the 48-year-old had been killed around 6:20 and 8:45 p.m., with police suspecting a murder and robbery with an unknown amount of cash taken.
Sorry, I know you had mentioned that she told him to steal his wallet. Did he steal?
He took the wallet.
But did he steal money from the store?
He didn't steal money from the store. The money that they're talking about is so remember how Sharee was like, he carries cash and checks in his front pocket.
Okay.
I'm going to take those out today.
Okay.
And he's not going to realize it. The money's going to be safe, but it's going to look like it's gone.
Okay.
That's the cash that they're referring to.
Did they ever find out where the cell phone and the 20-gauge shotgun were? Was it ever found?
No.
It could have been
That's
anywhere,
crazy.
yeah.
I don't know when he tossed it out the window, but essentially it sounded like he was going down the expressway, tossed it out a window.
And you probably couldn't trace cell phones back then like you can now.
No. Unless you knew what you were looking for, like the serial number on the cell phone and or the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Like you wouldn't technically know, like even 20 years down the line, that if you were to find them,
right,
that these things were for that crime.
Mm-hmm.
So
makes you wonder how often that happens. People find things like that and think it's
probably
trash.
more than we know, which is a scary thought. Local newspapers were recounting friends' experiences with Bruce, from boyhood antics to his kind deeds as an adult. As police began chasing down leads, Sharee, playing the part of a grieving widow, went for a second interview with the Genesee County Sheriff's Office, having been initially interviewed in the direct aftermath of the death notification. Now seemingly calmer, Sharee presented investigators with a possible list of suspects: an ex-husband who was stalking her and wanted custody, perhaps referring to Duval, though to my understanding, there was no stalking actually occurring. Like, he was interested in getting custody of her oldest, yes, because that was his son, but he wasn't stalking her. But that is one of the things that she will usually stick to somebody if she's trying to make it seem like they're the bad guy. because she also basically said that to Laura when she first met Jerry at the casino of like, oh, this guy is harassing and basically stalking me at the blackjack table.
Right.
So suspect 1 on Sharee's list was ex-husband. Suspects 2 and 3 were 2 random customers who had come in the previous morning, so that Monday morning, and were rudely hitting on her until she scared them off by pretending to call police. Don't know if they ever existed.
Right.
And 1 John Joel Hutchinson, who owed Bruce about $2,000. That name may ring a bell to you, as John Joel Hutchinson appeared in the first script, being identified as a friend and former employee of Bruce's, as well as an ex-fling of Sharee's.
Is this the guy who Bruce was like, oh, don't worry about it, you'll get me when you can, kind of thing?
But he was also the friend that warned him about Sharee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she know do we have any indication? Okay.
It's unclear if their romantic history was the reason why Sharee decided to include Hutchinson on her suspect list, with it more likely that Sharee realized Hutchinson was already on the sheriff office radar, having received 2 deputies at the scrapyard Monday morning and learning from them that Hutchinson was under investigation for auto fraud.
Auto fraud.
What is auto fraud?
Yeah, that's awesome.
We'll get to it.
Here's your car. It's not actually a car anymore.
Is it basically Danny DeVito and Matilda?
Yes.
Oh.
Like, literally, he, at one point, admits to rolling back odometers.
Yeah, that's the first thing I can think of.
But, like, that wasn't his main thing. We'll get to it in 2 paragraphs. Just give me a second.
Okay.
So the deputies had actually come to the scrapyard on Monday morning to speak with Bruce, as they suspected Hutchinson was using the scrapyard as the main hub for the auto scheme. But Bruce obviously didn't work the morning shift. He was still at home, so Sharee was like, oh, I'll pass on the message and he'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Sharee knew that Hutchinson was on their radar, and perhaps we don't know if the romantic history aspect played into it, but it certainly seems like it's kind of tinged with that of like you rejected me in the end, so I'm going to rub your nose in it. At least that's how John Joel Hutchinson would later come to see it.
Sorry if we already mentioned this, but John Joel Hutchinson, is that what we were talking about, the Timothy Taylor or whatever?
No.
That's what I keep thinking of.
Robert Thomas.
Yeah.
John Joel Hutchinson is also a good name,
yeah.
though.
It is. A good 90s movie star name.
Yeah, or like a author who writes like spy.
Yeah.
Spy action.
Pretty solid name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
So the extent of Sharee's knowledge is unclear, as is if she swayed investigators any with her proposed suspects, but considering how strongly investigators were considering Hutchinson as their main suspect, we could probably safely assume that Sharee mentioning Hutchinson just rallied investigators along that line of investigation. Also egging investigators on in this line of inquiry was the testimony of John's brother Harold, who said that John had told him Monday night that his debt with Bruce was disposed of, quote unquote, which police took to mean as John possibly confessing to the murder.
Right. That's what I would assume too.
However, Harold was not considered a reliable witness, as he had a mental disability and was prone to saying what he thought people wanted to hear, and thus could be swayed with leading questions. Still, investigators pursued the lead. Hutchinson would later admit to running the fraud scheme, which featured junk car parts being put together into a luxury car, with that car given the vehicle identification number of a previously junk car, so the put-together car could obtain a valid title.
Wow.
There's a Johnny Cash song called One Piece at a Time.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not awesome, but I mean, it is kind of cool.
It's kind of cool that he had the know-how and the mechanical skill to be able to put together a car from...
If you do anything that Johnny Cash sung about, then it's cool in my book.
I mean, I don't want to say that's a good rule of thumb.
Right. Because he sang about a lot of stuff.
I was going to say, he literally sang like the Folsom Prison Blues.
True. If you shot a man just to watch him die, that's not cool.
Oh, that reminds me.
Oh.
You guys were trying so hard last time to figure out what song Sharee was dancing to. And the song is going to surprise you.
Oh, I'm no angel.
No. Worse. You know that Sarah McLachlan song?
No.
In the Arms.
One that they always
That's
play
what she
for the
was
Humane
singing to?
Society, the starving puppies.
That was the song.
That's what she was...
That's like not sexy at all.
That's not sexy, no.
I don't know what to tell you, man. That was the song choice.
Do you think it was sexy before those dog commercials?
Yes.
Maybe those dog commercials just ruined it for us.
Well, no. It technically wasn't sexy.
Romantic.
It was more romantic because at least it was like...
I always thought of it as like...
It was written as a tribute song to a friend that died of an overdose. And then like in 2006, 2007, the APSCA were like, hey, can we use this song? And at the end of it, apparently McLaughlin was like, that was a terrible idea, but also I guess I'm richer, so I can't complain too hard. And a bunch of puppies hopefully got helped, so. But that's not how I wanted the song to be used, actually, now that it's done.
How did you figure this out?
I went back into the source material.
And watched it?
Not watched it, but
listened to it?
No, I went back to Fatal Error, the book.
Oh, they wrote what the song was?
Yeah.
Oh.
They didn't like write the lyrics down or anything like that, but like...
I'm kind of mad that that's what the song was.
I'm not happy with it either. If anything, I'm kind of just like, I'm in the same boat as you of like, why that song?
Yeah,
right.
I don't think it ever could or would have been intended to be like a striptease song.
No.
You know?
Oh, it was more than a striptease, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Getting back on track after that weird little diversion.
An important diversion, though, I might add. We needed answers.
Yep.
Hutchinson also admitted to lead investigator Ivan Petrovka, P-O-T,
Great name.
P-O-T-R-A-F-K, not K.
P-O-T-R-A-F-K-A.
A-F-K-A. Ivan Petrovka was the lead investigator. He's going to turn out to be our computer tech guy in the investigation. Unfortunately, right now, though, that doesn't enter into things. Hutchinson tells Petrovka that the scrapyard was where John had obtained most of his car parts, but still, he insisted when investigators descended on his home to search it that afternoon, he had nothing to hide, and he had nothing to do with Bruce's death.
I have nothing to hide except for all these stolen car parts. But I did not murder anybody.
As police began seizing possible evidence, like several guns that did not match the 20-gauge shotgun, none of the guns matched the 20-gauge shotgun, and Hutchinson told them straight up, like, I haven't fired those in 2 years.
Right. And he's allowed to have guns.
Yeah, he's allowed to have guns. And he's allowed not to use those guns.
Right.
But he literally told them straight up, like, you can take them.
They'd be able to tell that, too.
Right.
If they've been
fired, yeah.
While they were searching his home, he agreed to be interviewed by the sheriff's office without a lawyer. Number one mistake.
Yep.
Hutchinson was not too dissimilar from Bruce Miller. Both were car lovers who had spent their entire lives in or near the Flint area, with Hutchinson attending Millington schools and growing up in Otisville.
He was a Cardinal, huh?
Yeah.
Millington Cardinal, wow.
John had met Bruce in the mid-90s and worked for him at the junkyard from late 1996 to 1998 when Bruce and Sharee bought out the former business partner and Hutchinson was laid off.
I always get excited when we hear local towns on here.
Interesting that Hutchinson was laid off after Sharee helped buy the junkyard with Bruce. Still, Hutchinson insisted there were no ill feelings after the layoff, with Bruce having lent Hutchinson the $2,000 sometime in the summer of 1999. If Hutchinson was avoiding Bruce, he said, it was because he didn't have the money needed to make good with his friend, and the embarrassment had Hutchinson almost pointedly being where Bruce was not. Hutchinson, unlike Sharee, also volunteered up the information that he and Sharee had previously been involved, which Sharee did not mention at all when she brought up him as a suspect, which you would think would be possibly a mention.
Right.
But slipped her mind. Still, investigators seized on the fact that from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Monday night, when Hutchinson said he was home, his stepson instead said John had gone out and was acting oddly when he returned, instructing the stepson to find Harold and tell him to call John. Add to that the fact that John would eventually fail at least 2 polygraph tests, and investigators were sure they had found their guy. Hutchinson had motive, the debt, and a possible extra $2,000 as supposedly missing from Bruce's pocket, and had no solid alibi, but that was not enough for an arrest. Still, possibly with Hutchinson in mind, investigator Petrovka told the Miller family that he believed Bruce's killer would be brazen enough to attend the funeral. No one suspected his words would ring true, especially with the person acting the least suspicious, at least according to investigators. In the immediate aftermath of Bruce's death, Sharee continued with the hysterics, though later reflection makes one wonder if it was hysterics or her guilt that prevented Sharee from coming into the funeral home to pick out Bruce's casket, leaving that to Chuck and Judy. They weren't the only ones noticing some cracks in the facade. While helping Sharee clean out Bruce's things, a friend had come across adult toys and porn that very obviously belonged to Sharee, not Bruce, especially with how Sharee reacted, quickly throwing all of it away.
In the arms of an angel.
I hate it.
Still, it was at the funeral on Friday, November 12th, did Sharee pull out her most dramatic performance yet, though she waited for the right moment. During the visitation, many people came to give the family condolences, including John Hutchinson and his wife. John, who had taken the second polygraph only hours before he attended the visitation, noted to Chuck that police thought John was responsible, with Chuck replying evenly that he hoped to hell John had nothing to do with Bruce's death. John even approached Sharee, quietly giving his condolences as she stood silent. However, it was when he turned and began to walk away did Sharee react, beginning to cry and scream, "Mommy, Daddy, get him out of here. He's the one who killed my husband." Like repeating it and screaming and crying. With the shock and the hurt of the accusation, it didn't take much prompting by Chuck to send John and his wife on their way and out of the visitation. As if to make up for her dramatics, Sharee would later apologize that day to Chuck that he and Judy had found Bruce. That apology, as well as Sharee's apparent refusal to look at the casket whatsoever, has suspicion prickling up for Chuck, especially as, within a week of the funeral, Sharee was again asking Judy to babysit the kids so she could enjoy a night out. But there was no proof that she was anything but a widow who was grieving a bit oddly. Also struggling to find proof of a dearly held belief was Jerry Cassaday, who scoured the Flint Journal's online page for any updates on the murder on the supposed crime boss he had killed. What he found instead were stories by Bruce's loved ones and testaments that Bruce was not a criminal. He was a blue-collar worker for General Motors who loved cars and joking with people. For a bit, Jerry pushed the stories aside with the belief that Bruce had everyone fooled. After all, Sharee couldn't be the liar here, right? Instead, he focused on the facts. The police were searching for a 66-year-old as a possible witness, with a suspect having been identified and interviewed but not charged. That being John Joel Hutchinson. While Jerry avoided the truth, now mutual friends of his and Sharee were putting together the pieces, with Carol Slaughter recalling how she heard the news of Bruce's death and found the obituary online. As if the obituary didn't raise questions, with Carol realizing that the obituary stated a different wedding date than Sharee had claimed in September. So Sharee claimed, "Oh, I got married to Bruce when his brother died in September."
Right.
The obit obviously says they got married April 1999, several months before Jeff died, quote unquote.
Also, Jeff wouldn't have been mentioned in the obituary, right? Because Jeff didn't exist.
Well, Jeff existed, but he was Bruce's son.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So that probably would have raised some questions, too.
Yeah, especially because he wasn't preceded in death by Jeff.
Right.
He was being survived by Jeff.
Right.
Lots of different questions Carol noticed. But even odder was the fact that Sharee innocently told Carol that she thought it was possible that Jerry had killed Bruce.
She brought that up?
She brought that up.
This is where it starts to fall apart, huh?
However, just as quickly, Sharee noted that she had given police Jerry's name and that they had cleared him of any involvement.
I'm joking.
She had done no such thing.
Oh, so she was joking.
Yeah, she...
Not joking, but...
Lying.
Yeah, lying.
When ballistics came back for John Hutchinson's guns, Petrovka and fellow investigator Sergeant Kevin Shanalan were disappointed. Yeah, Shanalan.
Great name.
Were disappointed to learn that none of the guns matched, aligning with Hutchinson's prior statement that they hadn't even been fired the prior 2 years. Though Hutchinson's motive was still strong, the evidence was just not corroborating the theory. Looking for another lead, investigators asked Sharee to bring in the family's finances, but that also quickly proved to be a dead end. No one in the family would have been particularly motivated by any financial payout after Bruce's death. While Sharee had received the scrapyard, Bruce's adult children, Jeff and Julia, received the $78,000 insurance payout from GM.
Good.
While Sharee would eventually sell the yard for an alleged $100,000, had access to Bruce's GM savings account totaling $50,000, and would receive $10,000 from Bruce's mother from the GM life insurance, Sharee would later tell investigators that all the money had been spoken for before it even hit her bank account, covering bills, of course. In truth, investigators would later learn that Sharee had spent over $23,000 on herself during a 2-week shopping spree in which she bought herself a diamond ring, new bedroom furniture, new carpet in the house to go with the new living room furniture and curtains, newly refurbished kitchen countertops, and a new furnace. During this time, she would only keep one piece of Bruce's furniture, his favorite chair, which his mother insisted be kept, and gave the rest of it away. She also gave away most, if not all, of the cars left in the junkyard, including the car that Jerry had seen and wanted via the August videotape. If Chuck had doubts about Sharee, they had doubled by the end of November, with Sharee going out nearly every weekend to the karaoke bar. It's unclear if the Millers knew it, but Sharee had taken to drinking heavily and smoking marijuana again, perhaps because she no longer had to hide it from Bruce, or perhaps because she was medicating the guilt away. Still, much to the displeasure and unease of the Miller family, Sharee quickly began seeing another man. Jeff Foster had gotten to know Sharee at karaoke hosted in Otisville, though they had initially met due to Jeff being the local Schwann's food delivery driver.
I can't even be mad at her for that one, because we've all been tempted by the Schwann's delivery man, have we not?
I can't say I have.
I was gonna say, from Nick's silence and my own silence.
Well, fair enough. To each their own, I suppose. So that's how she met this guy, was he was a Schwann's man.
Yes, but
and then they started going to karaoke together.
And very quickly, he was no longer a Schwann's man because he quit his job and just moved in with Sharee.
Oh, no.
Classic.
Jeff.
In short order, Jeff had moved in with Sharee, apparently sharing her love of cybersex.
Do you guys like karaoke bars?
In theory.
Yeah.
In theory.
Yeah.
I don't like it in practice.
Right.
If our karaoke bars were more like Asian karaoke bars where you basically have individual rooms for you and your group.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'd like that.
They have that at the mall.
Do they? That'd be fun. Very short order. Jeff moved in. Jeff's a big fan of the cybersex thing. Apparently, he was also kind of on Sharee's level of comfortability and deviance, and that, like, Chuck, who was trying to still be a good brother-in-law, was helping out with, like, drywall installation at Sharee's home. And Jeff was just sitting there, not helping, on the computer. And Chuck was like, what the heck is he doing? And Sharee's like, oh, he's on a cybersex thing. And it's like, gross.
It's kind of interesting how quickly these people became comfortable with having sex over the internet. Because the internet was such a fairly new thing, yet right off the bat, they're using it for some of the most
wild things
you could use it for, yeah.
Yeah, some people just need the medium in which to
be horny. They just need a place to be horny.
I wasn't going to say it like that. I was going to say for them to reach their full potential. But yeah, we'll go with what you said.
That's not reaching their full potential.
I mean, full potential of like what they can/want to do.
Right. If that's what they want to do, yeah.
Around the same time that she starts dating Jeff Foster, Sharee would insist to her in-laws that she was only going out so much to avoid scam calls and other harassment via phone by an alleged stalker.
Crazy.
Really weird.
That's crazy.
The stalker was actually Jerry, trying to get their relationship back on track.
But there's easier ways to ignore phone calls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Though they did begin emailing each other again towards the end of November, with a phone call between them on November 30th, Jerry seemed to sense that Sharee was pulling away, despite him still expressing his love and devotion for her.
I'm sorry, Jerry, but you're sensing that she's pulling away from you? Like that, it's fairly clear at this point.
In early December, sometime between December 2nd and December 5th of 1999, Jerry made another trip up to Flint to see Sharee, this time officially proposing to her. According to later emails, it would appear Sharee had accepted the proposal, but still, things were not quite right. For instance, Jerry noticed that Sharee had kept him away from her home, despite the fact that Bruce was no longer around.
Right.
Sharee blamed her distance on depression, both with life and with Jerry, as he had asked her once again for money help. When she went completely silent, Jerry worried, sending her emails and attempting to call her. It wasn't long before he began to put some pieces together, starting first with why Sharee had refused to let him come to her home. Despite her claimed love for him and her acceptance of his proposal, Sharee had a live-in boyfriend camped out in her former husband's home. Upset, Jerry borrowed money from his mother Charlene for a last-minute plane ticket to Detroit, planning to confront Sharee for her cheating. He scheduled his email to be sent when he was already on the flight, so Sharee couldn't attempt to stop him, with the email all but begging Sharee to meet him at the airport, show him that she actually cared. Otherwise, he'd have 3 options. Quote, find a hotel, drive to her home, or get back on the plane and never look back. Sharee was not waiting for Jerry when he landed in Detroit, and indeed she sounded annoyed with him when he called her from a payphone, telling him that the trip was badly timed. In response, Jerry drove to a liquor store, picked up a case of beer, and by midnight he was at Sharee's door, drunk and demanding answers, or at least a return to their status quo.
Hell yeah.
Attaboy.
That'll do it.
A little late, but
that'll do it.
Yeah.
When Sharee refused to sleep with him following some awkward foreplay, telling him she had only had sex with her boyfriend Jeff in her new bed.
Sorry, buddy, you've had a case of beer. I don't want to have sex with you.
Well, no, even worse. Not even like, oh, you're too drunk, but like, I'm sorry, I can't have sex with you. The only person I've ever had sex with in this new bed is my new boyfriend.
Oh, she said...
She's straight up telling him.
Oh, so she straight up tells him.
She just straight up tells him that she's cheating.
Damn. At times I feel bad for Jerry, but then at other times it's...
He brought it on himself.
Right. According
to Sharee, Jerry turned from demanding love to demanding money, allegedly reminding Sharee that he had the means to blackmail her. After all, he had saved all the proof of their misdeeds as assurance had something gone wrong in November. Again, this is according to Sharee, because obviously of the 2 people who were involved in that meeting, only one was able to talk about it later on.
Right.
So according to Sharee, Jerry turns to blackmailing her. Still, Sharee resisted, ultimately throwing Jerry out and sending him home 2 days earlier than planned. When telling his mother about the trip, he simply said he hadn't felt wanted, so he left. Sharee, on the other hand, was getting back on the offensive, composing an email to Jerry in which she gently tried to manipulate his mind away from possible blackmail plans. She admitted her infidelity, pretended to agonize about the pain she had caused, and ultimately offered to take him up on a deal. Money in exchange for him leaving her alone. She could only promise $3,000, a mere fraction of Jerry's $14,000 debt, but it was better than nothing. It worked, with Jerry back to telling Sharee that he loved her, but also agreeing not to call anymore.
I know $3,000 isn't the amount of money he was looking for. Like, he had a bigger number in mind. But wouldn't you feel so terrible if someone paid you $3,000 to leave them alone?
Yeah.
That would be devastating. Here's $3,000 just to leave me alone.
Well, it's also to not
blackmail me.
Turn her in.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But also...
In that case, it seems like not enough money, definitely.
But also, he's the one that actually killed Bruce, so...
True. So she could turn around and blackmail him.
Right. He's going to get in more trouble than she would.
Right.
I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Though Sharee had promised him the money, she wasn't in a rush to send it, instead going on the aforementioned 2-week shopping spree, where, again, she spent over $23,000.
Oh my God.
So she's like, oh, I don't have the money right now, but I'll send it to you soon. And then she goes out and in the next 2 weeks spends over $23,000.
Right.
By Christmas, Jerry was pleading with Sharee again for her attention, but it wasn't his pleas that caught her attention. It was that he forwarded an email that had been sent 3 days prior to the murder.
Uh-oh.
Well, Jerry saw the old email as a piece of their love story to reference back to in this time of crisis, because he was referencing back to the email like, you said that you were here for me and that we were in it together and everything like that, and you said that this is what you wanted.
Yeah.
Sharee didn't see that as like, oh, he's making his case. She saw that as...
You're blackmailing me.
No, not quite you're blackmailing me, but like, oh, you actually do have this stuff.
Oh, okay, so she didn't believe him at first.
Right. Which is part of the reason why.
Right.
Rather than respond, however, Sharee ignored Jerry and changed her email instead. To my understanding, it seems that she kept the old email address because Jerry was still emailing her stuff, and she was able to receive emails from Jerry later on, but I don't know if she just ended up giving him the new email address or if she just made a new email address and started using the new one as her main one and just shunted the Jerry email aside.
Right.
I think that is more likely. So yes, rather than respond, Sharee ignored Jerry. And as Jerry fretted about what had gone wrong, Sharee was spending New Year's Eve with Jeff Foster and upsetting her in-laws by flaunting the new relationship so soon after Bruce's tragic death.
Yes, I would imagine that would upset some people.
It struck Judy Miller odd when her sister-in-law asked if dating so soon after his death would upset Bruce, but still she told her that yes, Bruce would not approve and that she should be more discreet.
Yeah.
It certainly would not be the last odd thing Sharee would say to her, with the Millers unsure of how to move forward as the year 2000 dawned on them with no leads to Bruce's killer. January 2000 was an interesting month for major players in the case. On June 4th, 2000, John Hutchinson was interviewed by investigators again, this time with a lawyer present.
Good man.
News of his suspected involvement in Bruce's death was ruining John Hutchinson's livelihood, with many of the people he had worked alongside with Bruce giving him a wide berth and thus drying up his job prospects. Still, he again denied involvement when questioned again, going further into detail about his time with Sharee when asked. They had only been seeing each other casually for about 2 months during John's prior separation with his wife. Despite his willingness to be interviewed again, even after 2 failed polygraphs, investigators told John that they still suspected he knew more than he was saying, and that his lack of cooperation and straight-up denials could lead to maximum time if charges were pressed. So they were basically trying to scare him into confessing, even though Hutchinson was very much like, I literally didn't do anything.
Right.
Slap the cuffs on me for the auto fraud, but I didn't pull a trigger.
Did they slap the cuffs on him for the auto fraud eventually?
Eventually.
Yeah.
They probably used that as a bargaining thing during this.
Right.
Though.
They ended up kind of dropping things down to a misdemeanor level so that he would
testify.
Mm-hmm. About a week after John Hutchinson's interview, Jerry would email Sharee again, this time reviewing their relationship and how much he had done in service of her happiness and how much, in turn, she had lied to him. While money was the main sticking point for Jerry regarding Sharee's lies, it was enough for her manipulative spell over him to start to break. In the email, Jerry noted that, quote, I have always believed everything you have told me and taken it at face value, regardless of how strange it seemed at the time or how it looks in retrospect. I am just at the point that I can look at things with a clear head and a clear mind and reflect over the last year of my life. We don't know if Sharee ever read that email, with her focus more on pretending to be a grieving widow. How she attempted to do this was by raising eyebrows and making a show at the Genesee County Sheriff's Office around mid-January, demanding to know more about the investigation while also scolding investigators for their lack of progress. That act wouldn't have usually prompted suspicion, as, again, people get upset and demand answers to their loved ones' murders all the time. But this was coming on the heels of investigators hearing a steady stream of stories about Sharee living it up around town as a single woman, not as a widow, in the weeks following Bruce's demise.
It's kind of funny to picture her living it up around town in Otisville.
I know.
I was just going to say Otisville.
She's out almost every single night. She's with a guy. She's drinking heavily. Mm-hmm. At one point, people are reporting that she's dancing on tables at the bowling alley kind of thing.
Yeah. A lot of these high-profile murder cases where it's the husband killing the wife or vice versa, this is how they always get caught.
Yeah.
Guys just chill for a couple of years.
Right.
But I'm no angel.
You were close. They both are angel
I was
songs.
pretty close, yeah.
Still, investigator Petrovka told Sharee during a January 26, 2000 interview that their leads were all but exhausted. The news probably pleased Sharee for a moment until Petrovka followed the news with a question. Would she be willing to take a polygraph test and take herself fully out of the suspect pool? Sharee...
No.
Yeah, Sharee immediately refused.
Yeah.
Citing lawyers' advice and her fear that nerve pills she was taking would affect her score.
Right.
Her refusal still frustrated and confused others, with Chuck and Judy Miller telling Sharee to just do the test, if for nothing more than to move the investigation forward, and Carol Slaughter again realizing Sharee's stories weren't adding up. A nurse, let alone someone who ran an entire nursing home, would not refer to the medication as nerve pills. The language would have been more clinical, if not the actual medication's name.
True.
Okay, I'm on anxiety medication, or I'm on...
Right, exactly. You would specify the condition that it was.
Yep.
Right.
If she said it was anxiety medication, Carol would have been no, that tracks. Mm-hmm. But she said nerve pills.
Yeah, that's really weird.
If you were on nerve pills, you also wouldn't be drinking and dancing up on tables at bowling alleys.
Very good point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could, but...
You could, but it wouldn't be good for you.
Yeah, it wouldn't end well.
Be against doctor's advice.
Right.
For sure. However, the case would not move forward until the middle of February, when Jerry opened a Pandora's box of evidence that Sharee could not escape from, with a devastating final decision. And we'll be right back in just a moment. And we are back. Okay, we only have a few more pages to go. Let's just get down to business.
Keep chugging.
This is where the suicide trigger warning comes into play. Jerry Lee Cassaday sat in his favorite recliner on Wednesday, February 9th, having dragged the chair over in front of a window that overlooked the lake behind his Missouri apartment. On the windowsill, he had carefully arranged several photos, one of his son Jimmy, another of the family Jerry had formed with his ex-wife Barb, and one of Sharee. Sharee's inclusion on the windowsill was a bit of an odd choice, considering the anger Jerry held towards her had poured out to her in one final email. That email was one of several letters Jerry wrote that February day, also writing notes to his parents, his son, and his ex-wife, explaining and apologizing for his actions. Though another letter, one with the instructions, "Do not read alone," would be found before the other letters, these were just as important, with Jerry admitting to his parents that he had killed a man at Sharee's behest. It's unclear if Jerry still thought Sharee had ever been pregnant, but it truly didn't matter, with Jerry noting that he had committed the act because he thought it was true that Bruce had caused the miscarriage and abortion of 2 separate pregnancies. Quote, "I drove there and killed him," Jerry wrote, noting Sharee was involved and helped set it up. He admitted that he had been played the fool, that Sharee had just wanted Bruce gone, probably so she could have his money. Though he acknowledged that he should face the consequences, Jerry also explained his decision for suicide with the fact that ex-cops did not fare well in prison. He begged his parents to make sure Jimmy was taken care of, while his letters to his ex-wife and Jimmy expressed his love for them. To his ex-wife, Jerry apologized, saying that his life had truly fallen apart when he demanded their separation, and that it was one of his biggest mistakes. To Sharee, the tone was not as kind, with the subject line stating, "Something for you to think about." In this missive, Jerry let loose a depth of bitter anger, taking Sharee to task for all the lies and promises she had manipulated him with. She had promised to make his life a fairy tale, and instead it was a nightmare where Jerry looked over his shoulder, be it for police or for debt collectors, especially as he had written checks with the belief Sharee would soon send him that promised $3,000, and they had instead bounced, the money obviously not in Jerry's hand. Still, he assured Sharee that he would no longer be looking over his shoulder. Instead, she would be. He ended the letter by blaming her for all the evil in his life and by telling her that he only hated her now. When the suicide letters were done, they were put into the briefcase Jerry had packed all those months earlier, placing the letter to attorney John O'Connor on the top of it before placing it all under the bed. This was when he had moved the chair in front of the window, set up all the pictures so that he could look upon the abhorrent faces of his life. Also arranged nearby was his wedding ring and his divorce decree. Jerry sat down in the recliner, placed a Bible on his lap, and turned to the book of Matthew, seemingly to chapters 4 and 5. While chapter 4 begins with the temptation of Christ by Satan and continues to one of Jesus' first major sermons, of which murder was a topic, it was chapter 5 that would pique investigators' interest before the briefcase was found. In addition to being sandwiched between the temptation of Christ and a discussion on adultery, Chapter 5 of Matthew reads, in part, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment,' as well as, quote, 'Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny.'" With those words possibly ringing in his head, Jerry used his 22-gauge rifle to end his own life. He didn't know that a few hours later, a psychologist at a Kansas City mental health center would attempt to contact him to tell him that he was cleared to return to Haraz for work. He didn't know that his lack of response would prompt Haraz to also reach out, attempting to tell him that his job was in jeopardy if he didn't respond. And he definitely didn't receive that $3,000 Sharee finally sent, which was delivered perhaps a day before Jerry's body was found on Friday, February 11th, 2000, with a note, "I didn't lie. I was telling the truth."
He killed himself with a 22?
Yes.
Wow.
I was also surprised.
It's really ballsy because, like, there's a very good chance that doesn't kill you right away.
When he was found, it was by his landlord's wife, and in short order, police were there. To them, it was a cut-and-dry suicide. The complications would arise once they had cleared the scene, leaving the apartment to be cleaned out by Jerry's older brother, Mike. The task was already difficult enough. Mike had lived the closest to Jerry, with their parents retired to Texas and brother Roger living down there as well, so he was taking on the task alone. It didn't help that he had only just recently talked with Jerry, had made plans for Jerry to move in with him as Jerry faced eviction from his apartment. But as he moved from room to room, he would make a discovery under Jerry's bed that would harken back to an odd request made months earlier. Under Jerry's bed laid a briefcase with letters taped to the top. It was the briefcase Jerry had told Mike to retrieve all those months ago, with the letters of apology to his family taped on top, alongside the envelope that instructed the opener to not open it alone. Immediately, Mike took the briefcase, locked it in his car's trunk for safekeeping as he began to look for a phone. Kansas City attorney John O'Connor was watching TV, trying to wind down for the evening when he received the call from Mike Cassaday. Though emotions sometimes got the better of him, Mike explained to O'Connor that Jerry was dead, but had left behind a letter for O'Connor and a briefcase full of something. Mike wasn't sure. O'Connor was able to convince the emotional man to wait to open the letter until after Jerry had been laid to rest. While he understood the want for answers, O'Connor also knew the family already had enough on their plate. No need to add more before the funeral. Thus, it wasn't until the following week, on February 15th, 2000, that the Cassaday family at last saw a glimpse of what was in the briefcase. The family definitely noticed Sharee's absence at the funeral, and it did nothing to calm their suspicions that she had something to do with Jerry's death, even if it had just been despair from their breakups. When Sharee had learned about Jerry's death the prior week, she was more of a nuisance than a help, with Jerry's ex-wife Barb feeling as if Sharee was probing for some kind of extra information as she asked when the funeral service would be, how the family was doing. It was only after the funeral, when Jerry's parents opened his letter to them, that their suspicions proved true. Sharee, directly or indirectly, had been a reason for Jerry's suicide, and she had been trying to work out how much the Cassadays realized that, and if they had the evidence Jerry had told her about. When the family met with O'Connor at his office on February 16th, they faced a difficult decision: expose their loved one as a killer and bring his accomplice to justice, or just bury the information with Jerry in the ground.
What choice would you make?
I would probably turn them in.
In that exact situation,
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
turn him in.
Like, it's
clear he had been manipulated.
Right. But they didn't know he had been manipulated.
I feel like seems like he spelled that out. I don't know.
Both in his letters, and then also
that's fair. Yeah.
Considering the fact that, like, the Cassadays were dealing with Jerry as he was going through all the emotional ups and downs, and he was feeling those emotions and telling his mom about them.
Plus, if you knew the answers were there, you would have to. There's no way you could leave those questions unanswered if there was the opportunity to have them be answered.
Right. Despite a slightly dramatic request to have the bomb squad check the briefcase, O'Connor was at first worried that Jerry had booby-trapped it, since O'Connor was a defense lawyer who had defended some criminals that Jerry had brought in.
Right.
He thought maybe this is a very weird, convoluted revenge thing. Turned out not to be, and O'Connor was honestly a very big help to the family. In addition to, like, looking through the evidence, he also was able and did tell them there is enough to convict Sharee.
Yeah.
There would have been enough to convict your son if he was still alive. That's how strong the case is.
Can an attorney, if the family had decided not to do anything, can the attorney not do anything with that information if there's, like...
I don't know. Because I feel like that technically would go against client confidentiality, but at the same time, I don't know.
Right.
Especially in this kind of case, because it was more like, instead of an established client, it was more like a referral kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Listeners, if you have any answers or insight, that would be very helpful.
Do you think attorneys listen to this show?
If they do, they're probably screaming every time that I talk about legal
fair.
stuff.
That's fair.
If I am getting it right, heck yeah. If I am getting it wrong, I'm so sorry. I am trying my best.
Yeah.
In addition to laying out the fact that there is enough to take this to police and have something actually done with it, O'Connor was the one who ended up calling the Genesee County Sheriff's Office once the family gave him the go-ahead.
Mm-hmm.
He facilitated the meeting between the family and Genesee County investigators once the family decided that there truly was no choice. 2 men were dead, and they both deserved Sharee being held accountable. When investigators in Flint received O'Connor's phone call on February 17th, they were surprised and intrigued by the story, especially as Petrovka himself had computer experience and there was the promise of a computer hard drive and accounts with a trove of evidence. The request to travel to Missouri was almost immediately granted by Genesee County Sheriff Robert Pickell, and by the next day, Petrovka and another investigator were in Kansas City meeting the family with O'Connor's supervision. The break had come at a low point in the investigation, especially as Hutchinson was continuing to prove to be a weak suspect with his honesty, and Sharee was proving the opposite by doing the opposite. It didn't help that, even as she didn't admit their previous fling, she insisted that Hutchinson was guilty, seemingly bent on sticking the blame to him. After reviewing the evidence in the briefcase, which included the chat transcript from November 7th and 8th, the pictures of Sharee's faked bruises, and the suicide letters, investigators were much more convinced that Sharee was the true suspect. A search of and around Jerry's apartment proved fruitful, with police finding the 2 videotapes Sharee had made for Jerry in the trash, while Jerry's hard drive still saved hundreds of incoming and outgoing correspondence between the 2. There was no doubt that Jerry's Sharee was Bruce's wife Sharee, even as a story Sharee had told the Cassadays made investigators scratch their heads. In Sharee's stories, Bruce was abusive, manipulative, a master criminal who married his brain-dead brother's widow for control of her businesses, and that obviously wasn't really Bruce, and that obviously wasn't really Sharee. Though Jerry was not alive to speak to his relationship with Sharee, his friends and family were, with his mother Charlene sharing every personal detail Jerry had confided to her about his relationship, including the December trip. When investigators contacted Carol Slaughter in Reno, she was unsurprised when she learned that they wanted to know about Sharee. As the Genesee County Sheriff's Office prepared for an arrest, they double-checked a few more details of Sharee's stories to the Cassadays, confirming that she had had her tubes tied in 1995, while a check of local police and dispatcher reports showed that there had been no reported abuse at the Miller home before or after Sharee married Bruce. Perhaps she truly wanted a break, or perhaps because she felt that law enforcement's noose was tightening around her, but Sharee decided to travel with boyfriend Jeff Foster to Reno for President's Day weekend. As the Cassadays sat with O'Connor on February 16th, Sharee was flying out to enjoy time away with her boyfriend. Despite the death happening only a week prior, Sharee asked Carol Slaughter to not mention Jerry's existence to or in front of new boyfriend Jeff. Perhaps an understandable request, given the possible awkwardness, but that request took on a new light to Carol when she was contacted by police. As with her messages to Barb, Sharee seemed more focused on trying to suss out what Carol did and didn't know about Jerry, their relationship, and why he had killed himself, than she did on actually socializing and enjoying the trip. Sharee was grating on Carol's nerves, and not just because she was still pretending to be a high roller, acting entitled to free tickets and complaining that the casino wouldn't give her a higher chip amount. So when you go to a casino, you're approved for up to a certain dollar amount of chips. She kept trying to be like, give me 1,000, and they were like 500 tops. Sharee had also told Carol during the trip that Jerry had sent her one last email wherein he had abruptly decided to kill himself and told Sharee that she would pay for it. Sharee didn't seem to believe that she would, so she was surprised that, when she arrived back in Flint on February 22, 2000, still a bit tipsy, and with Jeff Foster following along like a lost puppy, she was greeted by officers from the Genesee County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah. About time.
My heart goes out to the former Genesee County Sheriff's deputy who had also been on the flight back from Reno, who saw the Genesee County Sheriff's people and was like, oh no, am I getting a death notification?
Oh, jeez.
He walked up to them and was like, is everything okay? And they were like, oh, hi, Bill. Yeah, you're fine.
Get out of the way.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice to see you, but we're on business right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to that guy, because Sharee and Jeff also cut him in line when they were getting on the plane to come back to Flint. So how would have that felt for like a dose of justice? Like, she's such an awful person. She cut in front of me and she's being arrested.
Yeah.
That would make my whole day.
I didn't know they arrested people for cutting in line.
So Sharee agreed to be interviewed, with police reminding her over the course of the 3-hour interview that she was free to leave at any time. Later, Sharee would claim that they had held her for closer to 13 hours and had prevented her from using the bathroom as she struggled with her menstrual period. I could not find anything coming close to verifying that, though Sharee and her lawyer would later insist at trial that that was the case.
Kudos for trying to find that, because I don't even know where you would begin. But
yeah. Regardless, Sharee, not knowing investigators had recently returned from a trip of their own, stuck to the story she had been using thus far with the local crowd. Her marriage with Bruce was happy, there was no infidelity or abuse, and the two had promised each other to never divorce. Investigators noticed that Sharee was more evasive on the topic of finances, with it hard to determine the state of her financial situation. Sharee insisted that Bruce was not involved in any crimes, especially not Hutchinson's auto fraud. She also brushed off questions about her recent trip to Reno, chalking the trip up to a weekend getaway to dance and gamble, and insisting that prior Reno trips had been approved and known by Bruce. As police repeated questions, trying to get a truthful answer, Sharee grew frustrated, again insisting that the marriage was great and that Bruce had only been 2 weeks away from officially adopting her youngest 2 children. I can't imagine the look on Sharee's face when investigators asked if she knew Jerry Cassaday, especially as she seemed to double down, claiming non-committally at first that he was an online friend of hers. When she was asked where Jerry was now, Sharee snapped, "You know the answer to that."
Whoa. Yeah.
When pushed, she told investigators that she had last seen Jerry in Reno, but had contacted his family the week after his suicide. She denied telling Jerry that he had gotten her pregnant, bringing up that she had her tubes tied in 1995. However, she only truly exploded when investigators hinted that they knew she and Bruce were having problems, especially according to chat transcripts, with Sharee saying that Bruce was aware and involved in the cyberplay. Though she admitted Jerry had visited her after Bruce's death, she still insisted they did not have an affair. Little by little, Sharee's story began changing before investigators' eyes, with Sharee conceding that perhaps she had told Jerry about alleged abuse, but only because they were role-playing, and perhaps he had taken it too seriously since, according to her, Jerry wasn't all there. She also contradicted herself several times about when she had last seen and had stopped talking with Jerry Cassaday, even as she attempted to paint him as a stalker who was harassing her. When asked if she had ever asked the ex-cop for tips to survive an interrogation, Sharee insisted that she be free to leave, but despite being assured again that she could leave, Sharee instead stayed, apparently still curious about what investigators possibly had on her. She consented to hearing some of the chat messages she had allegedly exchanged, but as the damning words were read, she insisted that emails and chat logs could be faked and that she wanted to go home. She was straight up saying, "This is bullcrap. You made this up. Like, how dare you? You're trying to stick this on me. I want to go home now." This time, Sharee was denied, and police placed her under arrest. At the same time, investigators combed through Sharee's home, seizing the computer and finding in its hutch the misspelled information of John O'Connor. There was too much to be explained away now, and whether Sharee knew it or not, she would have the chance to tell another audience her story, her case and eventual defense lawyer strategy all but forcing her to testify in her own defense. Next time, the trial of Sharee Miller and the long road to justice, here on Thumbing Through the Archives.
Oh, another cliffhanger? I thought this was the last part.
It was supposed to be, but,
you got us.
But because the first script ended up being broken into 2 parts.
Okay. Fair enough. It's a good spot.
It is.
Yeah. Another good script.
Yeah.
I hate her, but...
I mean, if anybody comes out of this liking Sharee Miller, I'm worried about that person.
Right. Wow. She ruined a lot of lives.
The thing that really blows my mind is the fact that, like, she ruined Jerry's life, she ruined Bruce's life, and then she's trying to ruin John Joel Hutchinson's life.
Right.
Even though, like, by all accounts, they were casual at best.
Right.
They were hookups.
Right. I'm waiting for her to try and ruin Jeff's life now, the new guy.
Jeff is a weird one.
Okay.
Jeff would later be like, I think she's innocent, but my reasons are completely different from what everybody else's reasons are. And when the authors for Fatal Error approached him to interview him about his relationship with Sharee, he was like, well, no, worse. He was like, pay me.
Oh,
he has no reasons.
Right.
No, exactly. Jeff is honestly just a loser.
I don't know if you can be a Schwanzman and a loser.
He quit the Schwanzman thing to become a loser.
Okay.
And then he just never
technicality.
And then he just never picked the Schwanzman thing back up.
Yeah, because you can't be a loser and a Schwanzman, so they couldn't rehire him.
No.
It's a lot of
them's the rules.
Yeah.
Painful downfalls, downward spirals.
Yeah. So she did ruin Jeff's life.
In a way.
Yeah. He had it all.
You know, on one hand with this, I think that the internet aspect of it makes me want to say, well, it's like role playing and playing a game for Sharee online, and she kind of lost touch of the fact that this is impacting real people, but she was doing this in real life too, not just online.
Yeah,
so.
She was doing this with her ex-husbands and like her baby daddies prior to getting on AOL in 1999.
Yeah.
Again, she just happened to find the medium that maximized
it to the next level.
Yeah, that maximized the effect.
Yeah.
It's just a sad story all around because like Jerry really must have felt trapped.
Yep.
And it's just so sad because like there's so many different things of like literally if he had stayed alive for like 2 or 3 hours longer, he could have gotten that call. Things may have changed, but at the same time, I don't know if things would have changed.
He'd still spend the rest of his life in prison, probably.
If it even came out.
Right. It might not have come out.
It might not have come out.
Because the suicide was the reason they got all that information.
Yeah.
But would he have been able to live with himself?
Right. Like, would he have...
And just because she gave him the money didn't mean that she still wanted to be with him.
No, and also, again, it literally came so late.
Right.
Like, she didn't technically know that it came a day too late, but like...
Right.
Regardless, if you say that you're going to be sending money in December and it's February when you send it.
Right. That's a long time.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I know the Postal Service can be kind of spotty, but like...
Yeah.
Not that spotty.
Also not back then.
Right. It's an interesting case to follow, especially from where we're sitting now, where we have all the answers, we know all the reasons, but now we're going to have to see how the prosecution and police convince a jury of her peers. That was another episode of Thumbing Through the Archives. Thank y'all for tuning back in. Hopefully there will be 2 other co-hosts or something like that. Because with how these hooligans are acting, there's probably a big cutout of silence right before I'm saying this.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm not.
And I'm Mike.
Bye.
Can we do it properly?
Sure.
Yeah, we can.
But I'm Erica.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Nick.
And that finishes up this episode. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
This has been another edition of Thumbing Through the Archives on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Catch this episode in podcast form every Thursday after the program on our website at SaniLacBroadcasting.com. Thumbing Through the Archives, produced by Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee, with assistance from Catherine Connolly.